Well, now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in our analyst who is hanging out with us here in the Lagos studio today for a change, Dr. Constance Ikoku. Good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Vimba. Really hanging out with you guys.
Dr. Constance claims she has no favorites, but I feel we can all see her favorite right now.
Oh my goodness.
I think it's clear. You know, I think
favorites are this one. Come on.
That's very motherly of you. I like it, but I'm your favorite. So.
Young girl Yolanda, hi. How are you?
Constance.
Anyway, with your smile like the breaking of a new dawn, it's clear who your favorite is. Anyway, we won't change the game. We won't rock the boat, don't worry.
Okay. Thank you very much for not rocking the boat. All right, let's look at what's happening today. Hello there and welcome to the program. We begin with this day. In this day, former President Goodluck Jonathan shining light on the state of politics in Nigeria. You know, the shifting of loyalties, backstabbing, he's talking this morning. You know, all that he experienced when he was president. According to him, Nigerian politics is full of traitors and liars. You know, they will tell you something, the next hour they are saying another thing. And this piece also leads in another paper, Daily Independent. So let's pull up Daily Independent this morning. There it says, Nigeria's politics full of betrayal, lies, says Jonathan. Jonathan was speaking at the 70th birthday of his former chief of staff, Mike Onyedome. He praised Onyedome for being a trusted ally when he was in office. The former president said it's tough to see politicians who would say one thing in the morning and another in the evening, highlighting the depth of treachery that he suffered, especially in the 2015 elections. Former President Jonathan is speaking facts here. Maybe we need a special book on Nigerian politics. Politicians taking money from you and the next minute they're supporting other candidates. So this causes us to reflect on how such an environment leads to corruption, poor service delivery, and also creates instability. Vimbai, your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I think right before Vimbai comes in, I'll just come in here. There's a very common saying that there are no friends in politics, only interests. And once those interests shift, politicians also shift alliances. And we have seen, you know, these ideas of certain people being labeled as betrayers, whether it is that they leave their parties. We see politicians also seeing parties and as vehicles to their destination rather than a coming together of like-minded people. And so in Nigeria, it's not surprising that we'll say there's a lot of betrayals in politics. And I don't think it's a uniquely Nigerian thing because we see it also in history. It's a tale as old as time. But Vimbai, your thoughts?
I mean, I think the first thing that hit me is that we've been waiting for this moment where we hear Goodluck Jonathan speak on politics. He's been making several statements about several other issues over the past few weeks. However, I think we can comfortably say that this is the moment that he has broken his silence on politics, especially with the fact that he was pertaining to what he feels happened in the 2015 election. That was very instructive because, in essence, he is saying that he did concede defeat, but he's now saying that some of the things that played out were betrayal from loyalists around him. To me, maybe I'm being too presumptive, maybe I'm getting overexcited, but this does begin it does sound and smell like the beginning of potential conversations that we may hear around 2027. Is he going to run? Is he not going to run? We don't know, but the fact that it was a specific comment with regards to those who were loyal to him in 2015, and that's what happened to him in the 2015 election. It was an issue around betrayal. So, has he been reflecting? Is he getting his ducks in a row to potentially see how he can correct the things that went wrong in 2015 for a 2027 run? Well, that stands to be tested, but also interesting to see such a united outing in Edo State. You had all different sides of the political space coming together together. Adams Oshiomhole was present, former Governor Igbenedion was present. Monday Okpebolo was also represented, of course, along with Goodluck Jonathan. So it was also just nice to see that spirit of unity in Edo State across party lines as we continue to hold our breath, and wait to hear what more we may likely hear from President Goodluck Jonathan, as his name is currently on the front burner with regards to 2027.
Yeah, that's why you did say that this happens all over the world. But I just wanted to touch on the fact that, in Nigeria, we have seen it that it is difficult to build consensus on national issues, on national interests, on policies that affect us when there is deep mistrust among politicians, especially when it's across regional lines, and religion and all of that, things that really, disturb and cause a lot of problems in our country. Anyway, let's see a second story in this day. Here we have police summon ex-Kaduna Governor El-Rufai, others for disturbance of public peace. This is the Kaduna State Command of the police force. Recall that recently members of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, of which El-Rufai is a member, were involved in some fracas, or actually some thugs invaded the location of their meeting. And so they claim they are being attacked, but the state governor says they are inciting violence with the aim to destabilize the state. We know that there have been heated exchanges between El-Rufai and Kaduna State Governor Obasani. I would say that the state does not need this kind of tension. It's only 2 years away from the elections and we're having this. What happens when the election arrives? Benga, do you want to take on this?
The state of the opposition ahead of the 2027 election has come under a lot of deep concerns from observers. Even we can see the mass defection to the ruling party, and one wonders if this isn't another case of state and institutional capture. We have seen opposition party coming under a very, very hobbled state, and where you see a lot of uncertainty. And many of this, from the internal vibes we've been getting from many of this opposition party, is as if that there is a hand of Jacob and the voice of Esau causing cracks in this party. We don't know where the talks came from, but I think that we should allow parties to hold meetings. We should, and the state apparatus, the state security apparatus should have the responsibility to protect the meeting of these opposition parties too, alongside the meetings of the All Progressive Party. We've seen a couple of times where meetings of the PDP were disrupted from the Wadata Plaza over claims of non-payment of dues, and they had to shift the meeting back to the Yeredra Center, some of which I covered. So all these telltale signs does not portend that the state is ready to have a transparent and credible election. I really don't think that this is a good sign. Harassing, the ADC has put out a statement that they see this as a kind of clampdown on the opposition. And there have been so many worries that the state is drifting to a one-party state, and that's a clear tyrannical tendency. So I think the federal government needs to exercise a bit of caution, especially the Nigerian police, to exercise a bit of caution in how it handles the opposition matters. Otherwise, it will be seen as very parochial and very intolerant to opposition movements in the country. And that would clearly undermine Nigeria's democracy.
All right. There's another story in this day. CBN replacing civil servants with APC members as LG account signatories, says Osun Association of Local Governments of Nigeria. So Argon says the central bank is colluding with the All Progressives Congress to illegally open bank accounts in the name of local governments. I mean, those are serious allegations that definitely need to be looked into. We don't have much information here, but I think it is something that needs to be talked about. We've always discuss the independence of local governments in Nigeria and how they are very important because they are closer to the people. We saw the local government elections in Rivers State that took place recently. It was conducted under, that military head of the state. Even when others said it shouldn't have been so. But because local governments are very important, the elections that were conducted previously by the state governor, Sim Fubara, was not recognized, and so they had fresh elections. Anyway, Gbenga, do you have any thought on this?
Yeah, we can't allow the culture of impunity to go on. We have seen a situation where what is a clear miscarriage of justice, if you would allow me to say. Look at what happened in Osun State now. We have a case of conflicting court judgments. The opposition, the PDP in Osun State are claiming that civil servants that are statutorily allowed to withdraw money from the CBN are being debarred from collecting money and allowing political elements to have access to state funds. Clearly, this is an aberration to the rule of law. So I think that as it is, we have the PDP in Osun State claiming that 2 judgments favored them, which was the June 13, 2024 Federal High Court in Osogbo, and also the 2025 judgment in Akure that came from the Court of Appeal. But now we are also seeing the APC, the spokesperson of APC in Osun State, coming ahead to say that the judgment from the appeal court in February 2025 clearly gives them the reins over the local government in Osun State. So when you look at these developments, there is a case of conflicting court judgment, and the judiciary too should make a strong move to protect the rule of law and strengthen democratic governance. We cannot be running a state on what I will call a black market politics, where we have parallel laws conflicting one another. That would only lead us to the Hobbes, the Thomas Hobbes state of nature, where life is brutish, nasty, and short, and it ends up to be survival of the fittest. There is a way we can play politics. If the umpires, they say that he who calls for equity must come with clean hands. In the case of this, the Director of Corporate Affairs of the CBN is yet, Akama Ali, she's yet to explain why this development is so. So why are they keeping quiet? So we have again a recycle of what I will call institutional and state capture. This shouldn't be. The AGS have been fingered about the issue. Come out and explain why this is so. Otherwise, it will be accused and it will win the public optics and sympathy to be accused of taking sides. So there should be enough transparency in the operations. 35 states have been allowed to withdraw from the federation account, according to the law, the state and local government joint account. So why is Osun State not excluded from these funds? Why are they starving the people?
I think it's also important for us to remember that with regards to this headline, these are allegations. With regards to the issue of the allocations, the state has gone back to the Supreme Court. They went back last week. But with regards to this story of civil servants have been replaced by APC members, that is still an allegation from the PDP. So it's important for us to just also balance that and know that they have to come with the evidence. They need to prove it.
Right.
They need to prove it.
Definitely. Let's go back to Daily Independent. There's another story there. Opposition queries Tinubu's admin revenue growth claims, questions why FG is still borrowing if met revenue target. There's more here. Says 5% petrol tax cruel will compound misery of Nigerians. This topic of borrowing also makes the front page in the Punch. There, FG seeks fresh $81.75 billion World Bank loan. So the African Democratic Congress is not letting up on those criticisms, accusing the president of deceiving Nigerians with false revenue claims. The party cited 21.22 trillion naira shortfall between 2025 budget projection and actual collections, despite claims of making revenue targets. We know that story on tax revenue also features in Vanguard newspaper. So, I mean, as well as we can see, borrowing is still going on. At least international borrowing, not domestic borrowing. The president talked about domestic borrowing. But I also want us to interrogate this 5% petrol tax. Can we pull up that Vanguard newspaper? Because it's very bold there. I mean, how sensible is this after the removal of fuel subsidy? Has the government really thought about, how atrocious this would be, the effect on transportation, on goods and services, basic commodities, and other living expenses? I mean, this will be a strain on household budgets and will widen inequality. Yolanda, please jump in here.
Yes, I mean, what can I say? We are back in a familiar space again. The federal government is now seeking a new loan of, is it $81.7 billion, Dr. Constance? Something like that from the World Bank. And this just raises considerations about Nigeria's debt sustainability. We keep borrowing and borrowing. There's so many questions about fiscal management and if we have any actual strategies that are in place. Just as you rightly said, Dr. Constance, President Tinubu had said government has met its revenue target for the year. And although much of the details were not let out in terms of, how things were being done in the sense of strategy, this is just such a downer to see this, even though this is more from the international scene where it's the World Bank. But let me also play the devil's advocate by saying that money that is borrowed from, the IMF, the World Bank, it usually comes already with objectives. It's already set in place. So that also has to be looked into. But also, I say from the other side of my mouth that this points to the government's approach to financing development projects and economic recovery. We don't really know where it stands, but this also invites analysis, on the terms and conditions of such loans and their long-term impact eventually on the economy of Nigeria.
Definitely. As you've rightly said there, a lot of the loans that we get are tied to set programs like theirs with renewable energy, whether it's women empowerment or whether it's a conditional cash transfers that we've seen. It's supposed to have $1.5 billion. It's supposed to have reached 70 million Nigerians. I am still waiting to see those 70 million, but maybe I'll hit the streets. But let's go to this fuel tax, the 5% fuel tax that is supposed to be charged at the point of sale for petroleum products. This is part of the new tax regime that should come into effect on the 1st of January of next year. And it's part of the Nigerian Tax Administration Act that was passed by our National Assembly. Now, very importantly here, because some people have mentioned that it's not the first time this tax has existed. It is. We did have a 5% tax under FIRMA Act in 2007. However, that was it was not as broad as this, and it was inconsistent. It was not charged consistently, and it's essentially not the same thing because that act was also supposed to go to fund our road maintenance. However, this tax has been described as revenue generating because Nigeria can get up to 700 billion naira from this, as well as an environmental tax that, we're trying to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. We're trying to be better for the environment. And I honestly think that it's unconscionable. It is absolutely unconscionable that the Nigerian government should do this when they know that we do not have alternatives unless you are wealthy. Unless you are well-to-do. You cannot afford an electric car. And even CNG now, the price is going up and they're telling us that it's a private sector issue. It's not the government raising it. So even the CNG that you gave us as the alternative is even still rising in price. It is unconscionable when the world is talking about energy transition in a fair way, where the global south, we have to pay more already. So I think when we think about this 5% tax, and it also reminds us of the revenue that they're thinking, they're praising themselves for, because it is raising money but without creating value. There's no additional value creation, but they're patting themselves on the back for getting more revenue. And where does that money go?
government of taxation. Really? No, this is government of taxation. You're taxing people out of, you have to create the jobs anyway. Let's look at New Telegraph newspaper. 80 million youths tied to what we're talking about. Unemployed in Nigeria, according to this report. This represents 53% of the youth population. And this data is from the State of the Nigeria Youth Report 2025 in commemoration of the International Youth Day, organized by the House of Representatives Committee on Youth in Parliament. Furthermore, each year, about 1.7 million graduates leave tertiary institutions, but jobs remain elusive. This report speaks of shattered dreams, wasted talent, and desperation pushing many to irregular migration. I mean, always great to see the data because it stares you in your face, 80 million people. It's a harsh reality. Vimbai, ultimately, I think this threatens the country's future growth and stability by leaving an entire generation of people sidelined and, not sure of what to do with their future.
Absolutely. I'm going to tie all of these issues together because I'm glad you put them side by side. They all intertwine. If we look at the government's claims around increased revenue generation and being able to meet their budgets and so forth, I think that one thing we need to look at, while we acknowledge that, we now say, what is this money going to be spent for? I think nobody has any challenge paying that tax if they know that it's going to go towards social spending and they know that the cost of living is going to be cushioned for them. And they know that the social services will be available in response to that, the payment of that tax. Now, that's one aspect.
Very important question about, how do you track the spending? What is it being used for?
Is it being used for?
Yeah.
Now, another thing that we're looking at when we're saying we've increased government revenue is it going back into the productive sector? Is it going back into the sector that will boost the economy so that jobs can be created? We've already seen from with the GDP numbers that our economy is now service-driven. And we know that a developing economy such as ours is driven by the productive sector, by manufacturing, by industrialization. That's where the jobs are. But if you're saying that we're going straight from an agriculture, from a primary productive sector that focuses on oil and agriculture, we're going straight to the banking sector, we're not carrying along young people who are supposed to be skilled in jobs in the manufacturing sector, are supposed to be able to work in the factories, are supposed to be able to work in developmental industries that can supplement the economy. So ultimately, all of these things come together because, yes, kudos to the government for attaining their revenue goals. They're not borrowing domestically, and that's a big deal because last year there was a huge jump in our borrowing from the local banks, and that in itself is not sustainable. So number two things that need to happen here, the first is that let this increase in revenue go towards job creation through the support of our industrial and manufacturing sector. Number two, now that the local banks are no longer saddled with the burden of financing the government and supporting the government, there's more money that should now be available as credit to small and medium enterprises, which is a massive source of employment for our young people. So private sector, public sector have a joint job to do in order to see how we can drive the employment creation. And we also need to re-look at how we're calculating our employment numbers, our unemployment numbers as well, because the way we currently look at it, we've probably got a big percentage of our employment numbers accounted for by POS operators. Can we say that that's employment? Because the way we currently define employment in Nigeria, it means that POS operators are gainfully employed. Some might say they're making a lot of money from it, but let's create real jobs that stimulate the economy, is my point.
All right. Let's see Leadership newspaper. Northern governors backed Tinubu's push for state police. That's the dawn of a new era because we know that in the past they were very much against state police, but now you have a lot of insecurity in that part of the country. So perhaps that high level of instability is shifting our perspectives on this important topic. Benga, do you want to say something quickly here before we go to the international headlines?
I would call for a cautious approach in this approach to state policing, because when we take a look back at what seemed very close to state police in the early independence era, the establishment of the Native Police Authority, we could see a lot of political manipulations by politicians where they were used to create, to cause violence in the northern region during that time. So when you look at it ordinarily, we would say the country is long overdue for state policing, but on the other side, there is a need for caution because there's been a bit of merchandise in the security apparatus, in the security reality in this country. So we need to exercise a cautious approach given that kind of situation. The state government needs to be able to stand up to sift politics away from real governance, because this is the reality we are now, is that it's either now we fix security, either now or never. And if we miss this point, we can see how the state of insecurity has been allowed to fester from the fall of Gaddafi era. Now the whole Sahel is now captured, and people are now saying that no Sahel, no Africa. That's a very strategic point that covers 9 countries from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea. So when you look at that strategic importance, the need for, even apart from Nigeria fixing its own domestic security challenge, there is a need for international collaboration within these countries to ensure that they stamp out this. Otherwise, it's turning into a very lucrative venture. Banditry is turning into a career. How much can you work? How long would you work to make the kind of billions, the kind of millions that the bandits are making in terms of demand for ransom? So there is a need, because if we look at the existing security operations now, where the state governments, the state governors look more like a glorified chief logistics officer instead of the chief security officer that they are, it doesn't favor the domestic challenge that they are facing. They know these people, they know the routes, and they should be able to have some measure of control on the security architecture of their states. So I think there's a need for collaboration within the federal and the state. You cannot, a state government, a state commissioner cannot just be posted.
Okay.
He doesn't know the inside, the interior of the state, and he wants to patrol over that state. It's a kind of, it's clearly counterproductive. So I think we are long overdue, but with cautious approach.
Okay, thank you, Benga. Let's move to the international headlines. Daily Graphic, NDC primary, 12 aspirants clash in Tamale Central, battle for parliamentary seats in Ghana. The Citizen newspaper, scams why banks won't pay as out-driven fraud doubles with over 1.4 billion rand lost in 2024. Older consumers are targeted. Often they're not familiar with the latest technology and become target for scammers. You know, what a pity. The Guardian newspaper, PM must not meet Israeli president during visit, say Labour MPs. And the world has lost a giant. Giorgio Armani dies at 91. Armani is pictured there with models. Armani was more than a fashion designer. He was a visionary who redefined elegance on the global stage. And as for Benjamin Netanyahu visiting the UK, this will be a test for Keir Starmer, who has threatened to recognize the state of Palestine if atrocities in Gaza do not stop. Yolanda, please, your take on this.
Dr. Constance, coming from a background of diplomatic affairs, I can tell you for free that this move of the ministers being discouraged from meeting with Israeli Benjamin Netanyahu is very much the way to go. You know, he has recently been accused of genocide. With what is happening in Gaza, there are so many of the international humanitarian laws that are being broken by what has been happening. And having this meeting with him is not a good look for the ministers who are supposedly meant to attend. This will definitely influence so many diplomatic protocols. And I actually stand to put out my opinion that this is not a good idea. If we look at some of the things that has happened in recent history, with Israel and what's happening, they're actually denying these accusations of committing genocide in Gaza. And so the British ministers have refused to meet with him. So I think that this says a lot, and it remains a matter for the International Court of Justice to judge on.
All right. Finally, Financial Times, U.S. and Taiwan held secret talks day before China paraded military might. And Daily Express, the storm on Reina still raging, we know, in the United Kingdom. Insult not to sack Reina, says that headline. Angela Reina is, of course, the UK's Deputy Prime Minister, who is under investigation for failing to pay appropriate tax on her second property. That's all we can take on the paper review today.
Thank you, Dr. Constance. It's so lovely to have you here in Lagos. It's a really good TGIF.
I know.
Absolutely.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes.
Sitting beside these two powerful women.
And if I may take a cue from Dr. Abati of the morning show, there are implications.
Breakfast. Breakfast. Free breakfast. Okay.
Well, the world can hear you say that, so I'm getting fed this morning.
Yeah.